This is section 6.1 and 6.2, and today we're going to be solving one-step and multi-step linear inequalities. When we finish, I expect you to be able to solve a one-step linear inequality as well as a multi-step linear inequality, and you also need to be able to graph them. So we're going to start off with a little review. We're going to solve a multi-step linear equation. Now when we solve the equation, remember our goal is always just to isolate the variable. So in this one we're going to subtract 3 from both sides. So now we have 2x is equal to 5 minus 3. It's going to give me 2. Divide both sides by 2 so I can get x by itself. So I end up with x is equal to 1. Now the absolutely only thing that x is equal to is 1. Put a few numbers on my line graph. So when I graph this, I'm only going to have a circle at the point 1. Now let's take a moment and let's look at what's different between an equation and an inequality. So I have x plus 5 is equal to 10, and over here I have x plus 5 is less than 10. Well, one of the first things that I see is different is the equation has an equal sign and the inequality has an inequality sign. It could be less than, it could be greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. Now let's go ahead and solve both of these. So this one I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. So now I have x is equal to 5. Let's solve this one. Minus 5, minus 5. Now on this one I have x is less than 5. So an equation only has one solution, and an inequality has many solutions. Now let's look at one more thing. When I graph this, when I graph x is equal to 5, I'm only going to have this one point circled in at 5. Now when I graph an inequality, remember I have many solutions and I have to take that into account. So when I have my line graph, again 5 is my important point. This one it's less than, so I'm going to have an open circle, and then I'm going to have shading because I need to shade to show that, hey, there's a lot of answers for this one. It could be 4, 3, 2.2. Anything that's smaller than 5 is going to be a solution. Okay, now let's look at things we need to know when we're graphing. Now first of all, this symbol means less than. This one is greater than. When I graph this, I'm going to have an open circle on my line graph. Now with greater than or equal to and less than or equal to, I'm going to have a closed circle. So that means I'm going to make my circle and I'm going to fill it in. Now let's graph these two. X is less than 2. Well, I have just less than, so I know I'm going to have an open circle. And I'm going to ask myself, okay, is 3 less than 2? No. So since 3 is not less than 2, I'm going to shade, well, is 1 less than 2? Just to double check. Yes. So I'm going to shade to the left in this case. Now let's look at the next one. X is greater than or equal to negative 1. Negative 1 is my key point. I'm going to have a circle at -1. This greater than or equal to sign tells me that it needs to be filled in. Now I'm going to ask myself a question to see how to fill it. How to shade it. Okay, is -2 greater than -1? No. Is 0 greater than -1? Yes. So I'm going to shade to the right this time. And I'm also going to make sure I put the arrow on the end so that whoever looks at my graph knows that it continues. Now another thing that we're going to need to do is we're going to need to rewrite the inequalities sometimes. Because it just works a lot easier if the variable is on the left. So now I have 4 is less than x. It's going to be a lot easier for me to think about when I'm graphing if I put the variable on the other side. So I'm just going to rewrite it. I'm going to write it backwards from what I have. So I've got x. Now if I read the opposite way, I've got the big N toward the x. I'm just going to keep it there. So x is greater than 4. Same over here. I have w. Notice the small end of the inequality symbol is by the w. So w is less than or equal to 5. Small end is toward the y again. Y is, less than -17. So all I've done is I've just gone through and I've read it backwards and just kind of rewritten it. Okay, a couple of things that are really important for you to know. If you multiply or divide by a negative number, you must change the direction of the inequality. And notice that it's multiply or divide by a negative number. Okay, so let's look at a few examples. Well, first, a few questions for you to ask yourself. 1, as you solve, do I need to change the direction of my inequality symbol? The only time you need to do that is if you multiply or divide by a negative number. When you graph, will your circle be opened or closed? You have to look and see if you have less than or greater than will be an open circle. Less than or equal to, greater than or equal to will be a closed circle. Which direction do I shade? Do I shade to the left or the right? Okay, now let's solve and graph. X plus 5 is greater than or equal to 3. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to subtract 5. So now we have x is greater than or equal to -2. -2 is my important point. The greater than or equal to symbol tells me that it's going to be a closed circle. So I'm going to go to -2, make my circle and fill it in. Okay, now I'm going to ask myself, okay, is -3 larger than -2? No. Well, is -1 larger? Yes. So I'm going to shade to the right. Let's look at the next one. Again, solve and graph. Okay, I have -2 is greater than n minus 4. I'm going to add 4 to both sides. So now I have 2 is greater than n. This is just going to be easier for me to think about if I put the variable on the left side. So I'm going to rewrite it. So I have n is less than 2. Now 2 is my key point. So I have it right here. Oh, open circle at point 2. Now I've got to ask myself a question. Is 3 less than 2? No. Is 1 less than 2? Yes. So I'm going to shade to the left. Okay, again, solve and graph. A divided by -3 is less than or equal to 12. Well, my goal is to isolate the variable just like when I solve an equation. So I'm going to multiply both sides by -3. So now that cancels. Oh, what did I just do? I multiplied by a negative number. So notice now I've got a is greater than or equal to -36. -36 is my key point. This tells me it's going to be a closed circle. Now I need to find out which side I need to shade. So now I say, okay, is -35 larger than -36? Yes. So I'm going to shade to the right. Okay, -y is less than 3. Oh, I've got that pesky negative. How can I make it go away? That's right, I'm going to divide by -1. What did I just divide by? A negative number. So now I have y is greater than -3. -3 is my key point. This tells me I have an open circle. Now I just have to figure out which way to shade. Is -2 larger than -3? Yes. So there's my shading. Okay, let's look at a couple of multi-step equations. 2y minus 5 is less than 7. The first thing I'm going to do is add 5 to both sides. So now we have 2y is less than, see 5 plus 7, that gives me 12. Dividing both sides by 2 to isolate y. So we have y is less than 6. 6 is my key point. I'm going to have an open circle. Now I just have to figure out where to shade. Is 5 less than 6? Yep. Shade to the left. Okay, 5 minus x is greater than 4. I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. So now I have -x is greater than -1. Oh, I can't have a negative. Oh, I'm going to divide each term by -1. So now I have x. Oh, I divided by a negative. What do I have to do? I have to change the direction of my inequality. So x is less than 1. So my key point is +1. It's an open circle. 0 is less than 1, so I know I'm going to be shading to the left. Last one. X plus 4 is less than 2 times x minus 8. The first thing I have to do is I have to distribute. This problem's going to work just like every other. -x plus 4 is less than 2x minus 16. Let's see, I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides because I just want to go ahead and get my variables over there. So now I have -3x plus 4 is less than -16. I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides. So I have -3x is less than -20. Going to divide both sides by -3. Remember, I just divided by a negative. Be really careful. So now I have x is greater than 20/3. Hey, 20/3 as a decimal form, it turns into 6.6. So x is greater than 6.6. That's about 6 2/3. So that should be about right here. Now I'm going to shade the area where it is larger, and it gets larger going to the right.